Today we're talking about HiRez's upcoming game, Rogue Company. Haven't talked about this game in a while, but a lot of new information has surfaced. First of all, I'd like to thank the people that provided me with this information, and keep in mind here that not all of this is 100% confirmed. These are some leaks, some internal information, and some of it may have been changed throughout the testing process of the game as well. But overall, as a lot of it matched between the different reports that I got, I would say it's relatively reliable. And by the way, most of the reports that I got were relatively positive. Initially, I was thinking, would you really want to talk about that? But apparently, people who had the chance to play the game really enjoyed it. So what do we know now? First of all, one thing that I might have to repeat, especially with the trailer showing in the background, is that this is not a battle royale. You drop at the start of the game, but the game itself has other game modes. None of them is a battle royale mode. Overall, it is a team-based shooter with a class element to it as well. Right now, there's somewhere between 7 to 10 characters in the game, and these characters can equip some sort of ability as well, or some sort of perk. Some of these abilities are apparently similar to stuff that we, for example, see in a game like Apex Legends, and these abilities are at least to some degree interchangeable, so you're not locked into one loadout. I think this in itself is a very interesting aspect, as it shows that there will be flexibility in how you play the game and you can adjust accordingly. Additionally, the characters will apparently also have unique ability voice lines. So far, the game has at least 3 different maps. It's unclear if there will be more in the foreseeable future. The maps itself are structured slightly differently. They have somewhat different lane pathing basically, and some have multiple levels, multiple layers. For example, the ship map or boat map from the trailer is one of those. The very same map also has zip lines to travel between different boats, meaning that there seems to be a reasonable amount of mobility going on in the game and a reasonable amount of verticality going on as well. There are multiple game modes. The game modes that are likely in the game so far are, first of all, a search and destroy mode, which seems to be what's the most commonly played mode at the moment. Then a deathmatch, and also a domination-like mode where you have to hold capture points. When it comes to the weapons, at least in the search and destroy mode, as fitting for a mode like that, you actually have to buy them at the start of a round, and you will start the first round as a pistol round, so you kind of get your money in the first round and then can get better weapons through that. Additionally, there will be weapon skins in the game, and you also have a melee weapon. An interesting mechanic with this melee weapon is that it can apparently be thrown. We see this in the trailer actually, but I'm not sure how much impact this throw will have compared to a normal gunshot if it's just a last resort option, or how much damage those melee weapons will do in general, considering it's not just a short dagger or something, we actually have a full-on katana there. Maybe melee starts are possible. In deathmatch, there's apparently a weapon crate in the middle of the map, and that can contain a sniper or a shotgun. I have some different reports on the team size. It seems to be either a 5v5 or a 4v4. This may also differ from game mode to game mode. What's interesting and different from most other games of this kind is that, at least in the search and destroy mode, teammates can apparently be revived. That, in my opinion, adds a very interesting element, because I am not quite sure how that will play out. It would technically mean that many of these rounds may last much longer, but at the same time, it's also a question of how exactly the revive mechanic works. If it's a very short timer that you have to execute it, and you can kind of use a dead enemy as bait as well, we'll have to see how exactly that functions. There are some other things that are implemented. You will have access to a ping system in the game. I hope this is as close to Apex Legends as it gets, because I think that's the way to go. And there are smoke trails when you drop into the map initially, so enemies will roughly know where you land and can plan accordingly. And with the map being not a battle royale map, I think this has quite a significant impact on the strategy or the way that the game will be played. And there seems to be some format for bot matches where you can practice. Well, I'm not sure how good these spots will be, or if it's just more of a testing thing. Something that pretty much all sources stated was that the game was very polished and seemed to be in a very clean state, which is unusual for HiRez releases, but also maybe shows that they've learned from their past rougher releases. It was apparently quite a while in development before it even saw the light of day, which is basically the opposite of what happened with Realm Royale. I know there was another game concept from HiRez, which I think was originally supposed to be a Battle Royale that was then scrapped. So I'm not sure if some of the assets of that were moved over to this game and that was contributed to the development time, or if this was developed side by side, but it seems to definitely have been worked on in one way or another for a while. One of the people working at this game is HiRez Ryu. In between he was Titan Ryu, now I guess he's HiRez Ryu again, who many of you may, or some of you may remember as the guy who came in relatively, I think, late last year or middle of last year, and he kind of turned the direction of Smite around to some degree. He made some strategical approaches to the game that I think were very healthy for the game. And he moved over to Rogue Company, and that actually gives me a little bit more hope for this game, because I think he's somebody who has quite a good idea of what people want and what people enjoy. And as an extension of the higher polish and everything, the game is also developed on the Unreal 4 engine, not Unreal 3 like Paladins and Smite, which means that it should be significantly more optimized for modern times. And I think this was well overdue. Even though I would say that visually, at least from the trailer, it doesn't seem super outstanding. But I personally would rather have a game that runs very, very well and just doesn't have any choppiness, lagginess, glitchiness, good hitboxes and everything, over having one that has the most modern graphics out there. Now, the downside to the game, from what I've heard so far, is that it doesn't really bring that much of its own innovation. It's more a concept of combining some nice features from other games and making it free to play and making it accessible. So kind of a bit of a free to play somewhere between Call of Duty, Counter-Strike and Apex Legends thing maybe. And I will be honest, I was initially wondering why HiRez took this approach. So far, their concept for other games was mainly copying an already existing game format and adding their own spin. They did that primarily with Smite, of course. They did that to some degree with Paladins, even though the concept in many ways was originally further away from Overwatch and then moved a lot closer to Overwatch. But it turned out okay, I guess. And they most definitely did that with Realm Royale again, which is why I think that game had that initial success, because it took the Battle Royale genre but then added its own spin through the classes and the weapon forging and everything. And if it would have been handled differently, that probably would have still been alive today to some degree. Well, that's a sad story for another day. But I'm starting to see the appeal in this, because while the format has been touched upon in many different ways, I think it hasn't been quite done in this class-based format with the variety of modes and everything that surrounds it. And it has a few gimmicks that other games don't have, like the revive mechanic. And I can also see this being planned maybe with some intel that they may have had on Riot's games. First of all, because I think they actually have people that started at Riot, if I'm not completely mistaken. But then also because the game seems to go in a very similar niche to Project A or Project Ares from Riot, which I actually showed you a trailer of recently, which is basically a combination of Overwatch and Counter-Strike, and in itself seems very, very close to Rogue Company. At least as long as Rogue Company is anything like it's described. And that would be interesting considering the release times as well, because we know that Project A is still quite a bit away. It's not something that Riot is planning to release in the near future. I think they haven't even announced a year for it yet, whereas Rogue Company is already being played or play tested quite a fair bit, and I would not be surprised if we get more information about the game at HiRez Expo. The fact that you can already sign up for alpha, can I emphasize this? Especially since we know from the past, from Paladins especially, that HiRez likes to have players participate in the development, in the design process for games very, very early, and often launches long-lasting alphas just to get a lot of feedback from people and to optimize the game for a long time before releasing it. And with that approach, we would expect some of it relatively soon. Another selling point of Rogue Company may end up being the personalities that the game has, because especially in one of the early trailers, they already put a lot of emphasis on that. So we'll see if that's something that pays off for HiRez in the long run. We will see how it goes, and I hope we get a little bit more info and the alpha access soon. If that happens, I will of course update you about that. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell to stay updated on any upcoming HiRez news in general and other gaming stuff. See you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth out.